This is Residence 104.4 FM. Flipping marvellous. How you doing? I'm Nick Hennegan, coming at you once more with a slice of literary London, which, actually doesn't really, again, spend too much time in London, because happy James Joyce Day. No, Bloomsday. Yes, indeed, happy Bloomsday. We're celebrating the Bloomsday, of course, is an annual event. Every year, there is a Bloomsday which celebrates Ulysses. Of course, the famous book by James Joyce. So I'm just checking my emails because I've just had another email coming about this very thing. June the 16th of June is always Bloomsday, sort of a literary festival really, which honours James Joyce's modernist masterpiece Ulysses. The date marks the exact day the novel is set in 1904, and there are actually sort of physical Bloomsday celebrations all over the place. In fact, certainly in Dublin. I think now in the United States as well, and Australia, people will don an Edwardian dress and retrace Bloom's route in Dublin, or at least, mock it up. And of course, a famous part of the celebration involves enjoying a specific food, the sort of breakfast and stuff mentioned in the book. Most notably, of course, Leopold Bloom's breakfast of a pork kidney. Yeah, I'm trying to cut down on my meat. That sounds pretty horrible now, but there you go. Bloomsday. And what's interesting about... I should say as well, coming up, by the way, if you're a writer, I've been getting emails. I should do I'm all over the place, aren't I, today? It's the weather, love. Yes. We had a heat wave in the UK, and then it's been pouring down with rain, and various areas have had more rain in the first week of the month than they've had in the whole sort of spring period. Anywho, yes, so I get emails occasionally from people who are asking about writing competitions. I suppose it's because the blog of this radio show is bohemianbritain.com, and occasionally we talk about writing competitions. So I've got a few writing competitions to recommend for you. Coming up, they're either free or low price to enter, because a lot of writing competitions tend to charge quite a lot of money. And I'm a member of the Writers Guild, and they actually have a website, and they sort of grade things. These aren't from these recommended, they're not recommended. These writing competitions that I'm going to tell you about in a bit, they're just things that came into me. But no, I transgress yet again. So we are talking about Bloomsday, 16th of June, but also someone you may not have heard of is Sylvia Beach. Now, Sylvia Beach was an American expatriate, and she founded the legendary Parisian bookstore called Shakespeare and Company. She's probably best known in literary history, for taking a massive financial and legal risk to become the very first publisher of James Joyce's masterpiece, Ulysses, in 1922. And it's fair to say, I think the partnership transformed both of their lives, and it arguably shaped the course of 20th century literature. They basically met at a dinner party. Sylvia Beach met James Joyce at a dinner party in 1920 in France, in Paris. Joyce was struggling financially and couldn't find a publisher for Ulysses. Writers struggling financially, who'd have thought? But it was also considered obscene at the time, Ulysses was. So it was difficult for him, but he became a regular at Beach's shop on the Rue de l'Odion. You know what I mean. Anyway, Shakespeare and Co. And eventually they got chatting and they became friendly. And eventually James Joyce was lamenting that his book would never see the light of day. And Sylvia decided she was going to change all that. She'd got no prior publishing experience, so she offered to publish it under the Shakespeare and Company imprint. And how that all happened is quite fascinating. So what I'm going to do with you now, we shall play a little extract from Ulysses in a while, but this is a fascinating thing I came across. It's basically Sylvia Beach relating her involvement with two James Joyce recordings about Ulysses, and it's fairly rare. So I thought I'd, play it for you now. So here it is.
Mr. Patrick Saul has recorded the following story by myself of the recording in Paris by his master's voice in 1924 of the reading by James Joyce from his Ulysses, to to be preserved with the copy of the record in the library of the British Institute of Recorded Sound. In 1924, I went to the office of His Master's Voice in Paris to ask them if they would record a reading by James Joyce from Ulysses. I was sent to Piero Coppola, who was in charge of musical records, but His Master's Voice would agree to record the Joyce reading only if it were done at my expense. The record would not have their label on it, nor would it be listed in their catalogue. Some recordings of writers had been done in England and in France as far back as 1913. Guillaume Apollinaire had made some recordings, which are preserved in the archives of the Musée de la Parole. But in 1924, as Coppola said, there was no demand for anything but music. I accepted the terms of His Master's Voice, 30 copies of the recording to be paid for on delivery, and that was the long and the short of it. Joyce himself was anxious to have this record made, but the day I took him in a taxi to the factory in Billancourt, quite a distance from town, he was suffering with his eyes and very nervous. Luckily, he and Coppola were soon quite at home with each other, bursting into Italian to discuss music. But the recording was an ordeal for Joyce, and the first attempt was a failure. We went back and began again, and I think the Ulysses record is a wonderful performance. I never hear it without being deeply moved. Joyce had chosen the speech in the Aeolus episode, the only passage that could be lifted out of Ulysses, he said, and the only one that was declamatory, and therefore suitable for recital. He had made up his mind, he told me, that this would be his only reading from Ulysses. I have an idea that it was not for declamatory reasons alone that he chose this passage from Aeolus. I believe that it expressed something he wanted said and preserved in his own voice. As it rings out, he lifted his voice above it boldly. It is more, one feels, than mere oratory. The Ulysses recording was very bad, according to my friend C.K. Ogden. The Meaning of Meaning by Mr. Ogden and I.A. Richards was much in demand at my bookshop. I had Mr. Ogden's little basic English books, too, and sometimes saw the inventor of this straitjacket for the English language. He was doing some recording of Bernard Shaw and others at the studio of the Orthological Society in Cambridge, and was interested in experimenting with writers, mainly, I suspect, for language reasons. Shaw was on Ogden's side, couldn't see what Joyce was after when there were already more words in the English language than one knew what to do with. Mr. Ogden boasted that he had the two biggest recording machines in the world at his Cambridge studio, and told me to send Joyce over to him for a real recording. And Joyce went over to Cambridge for the recording of Anna Livia Plurabelle. So I brought these two together, the man who was liberating and expanding the English language, and the one who was condensing it to a vocabulary of 500 words. Their experiments went in opposite directions, but that didn't prevent them from finding each other's ideas interesting. Joyce would have starved on 500 or 600 words, but he was quite amused by the basic English version of Anna Livia Plurabelle that Ogden published in the review Psyche. I thought Ogden's translation deprived the work of all its beauty, but Mr. Ogden and Mr. Richards were the only person I knew about whose interest in the English language equaled that of Joyce. And when the Black Sun Press published the little volume Tales Told of Shem and Shaun, I suggested that C.K. Ogden be asked to do the preface. How beautiful the Anna Livia recording is, and how amusing Joyce's rendering of an Irish washwoman's brogue. This is a treasure we owe to C.K. Ogden and basic English. Joyce, with his famous memory, must have known Anna Livia by heart. Nevertheless, he faltered at one place, and as in the Ulysses recording, they had to begin again. Ogden gave me both the first and second versions. Joyce gave me the immense sheets on which Ogden had had Anna Livia printed in huge type, so that the author, his sight was growing dimmer, could read it without effort. I wondered where Mr. Ogden had got hold of such big type, until my friend Maurice Saillet, examining it, told me that the corresponding pages in the book had been photographed and much enlarged. The Anna Livia recording was on both sides of the disc. The passage from Ulysses was contained on one, and it was the only recording from Ulysses that Joyce would consent to. How I regret that, owing to my ignorance of everything pertaining to recording, I didn't do something about preserving the master. This was the rule with such records, I was told, but for some reason the precious master of the recording from Ulysses was destroyed. Recording was done in a rather primitive manner in those days, at least at the Paris branch of his master's voice, and Ogden was right. The Ulysses record was not a success technically. All the same, it is the only recording of Joyce himself reading from Ulysses, and it is my favorite of the two. On each of the Ulysses records was a label with the mention of the pages 136, 137, containing the passage read, Joyce's signature, and the imprint of Shakespeare and Co, my bookshop in Paris. The Ulysses record was not at all a commercial venture. I handed over most of the 30 copies to Joyce for distribution among his family and friends, and sold none until years later, when I was hard up, I did sell and get a stiff price for one or two I had left. Discouraged by the experts at the office of the successors to his master's voice in Paris and those of the BBC in London, I gave up the attempt to have the record repressed, which I believe is the term. I gave my permission to the BBC to make a recording of my record, the last I possessed, for the purpose of broadcasting it on W.R. Rogers' Joyce program, in which Adrienne Monnier and I took part. Anyone who wishes to hear the Ulysses record can do so at the Musée de la Parole in Paris, where, thanks to the suggestion of my California friend Phileas Lalanne, Joyce's reading is preserved among those of some of the great French writers.
Sylvia Beach, what a fascinating story. And yeah, I kind of love that. She hadn't got any experience of publishing, but she also, I think as well, let me get this right, as well as James Joyce's Ulysses, she was the first person to publish that. I think she was also the very first person who decided to sell the book by, what was his name now? Not a very well-known writer at all. Oh, that's right, Ernest Hemingway's first book. Yes, she decided to encourage the publication and sold copies of his first book called 3 Stories and 10 Poems. So Sylvia Beach, yes, remarkable woman, born in Baltimore in Maryland, in the United States of America on the 14th of March, 1887. She was the second of 3 daughters. Her parents, or her father, was a minister, so that was why they ended up, or how they ended up in Paris. Her story is quite, I mean, gosh, we could go on and on and on about her. She's quite a remarkable woman, and particularly one that I hadn't heard of until quite recently. But she was quite a character. Having said that, we are celebrating Bloomsday, and now I suppose we better hear a little bit from James Joyce himself, reading part of his own work. This is from Ulysses.
He began. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, great was my admiration in listening to the remarks addressed to the youth of Ireland a moment since by my learned friend. It seemed to me that I had been transported into a country far away from this country, into an age remote from this age, that I stood in ancient Egypt, and that I was listening to the speech of a high priest of that land, addressed to the youthful Moses. His listeners held their cigarettes poised to hear, their smoke ascending in frail stalks that flowered with his speech. Noble words coming. Look out. Could you try your hand at it yourself? And it seemed to me that I heard the voice of that Egyptian high priest phrased in a tone of like haughtiness and like pride. I heard his words, and their meaning was revealed to me from the Father. And it was revealed to me that those things are good which yet are corrupted, which neither if they were supremely good, nor unless they were good, could be corrupted. Hush, should I say to God. Why will you Jews not accept our language, our religion, and our culture? You are a tribe of nomad herdsmen. We are a mighty people. You have no cities nor no wealth. Our cities are hives of humanity, and our galleys, trireme and quadrireme, laden with all manner merchandise, furrow the waters of the known globe. You have but emerged from primitive conditions. We have a literature, a priesthood, an age-long history, and a polity. Nile, child, man, effigy, by the Nile bank, the babe Mary's kneel, cradle of bulrushes, a man supple in combat, stone-horned, stone-bearded, heart of stone. You pray to a local and obscure idol. Our temples, majestic and mysterious, are the abodes of Isis and Osiris, of Horus and Amun-Ra. Yours serfdom, awe, and humbleness, ours thunder and the seas. Israel is weak, and few are her children. Egypt is an host, and terrible are her arms. Vagrants and day laborers are you called. The world trembles at our name. A dumb belch of hunger cleft his speech. He lifted his voice above it boldly. But, ladies and gentlemen, had the youthful Moses listened to and accepted that view of life, had he bowed his head and bowed his will and bowed his spirit before that arrogant admonition, he would never have led the chosen people out of their house of bondage, nor followed the pillar of the cloud by day. He would never have spoken with the Eternal on Sinai's mountain top, nor ever have come down with the light of inspiration shining in his countenance and bearing in his arms the tables of the law, graven in the language of the outlaw.
Back in 1924, that's from 1924, wow, yes. James Joyce reading an extract of Ulysses because we're celebrating the 16th of June every year, which is Bloomsday. Of course, James Joyce's, one of Ulysses is the character, protagonist. I'm Nick Hennegan. This is Resident 104.4 FM, London's art station. We're also on bohemianbritain.com, my kind of messy little corner of the internet. And if you'd like to get in touch, then please feel free to do so. You can either, actually probably easier, I'm going to concentrate on this one now, this email address, Nick, N-I-C-K, at bohemianbritain.com. If you'd like to get in touch, Nick at bohemianbritain.com. That'll get you through to me, as they say. If you're going to the Edinburgh Festival, of course, as well, then do get in touch. I shall be up there with me electric handbag, microphone and recording stuff. Towards the end. I'm not doing the whole Fringe this year, which is kind of surreal because for the last, 10 years or so, I've been up there every week, for the whole festival. And this is the first time. Oh no, I lie like a dog. There was one year about 6 years ago when I just went up for 3 days. And that's more or less what we'd have to do. I'll go up there for a week this year for reasons I won't bore you with. I will bore you with them. It's because we're doing Winston and David. Our Edinburgh hit from a couple of years ago is at the Tabard Theatre in Chiswick, London W4. It's a lovely little intimate space above a pub, and there are a great bunch of people there. And Winston and David is about Winston Churchill and David Lloyd George, written by Robert Lloyd George, his great-grandson, based on material that he found. And it's the relationship between the two of them and how they changed politics. It also shows why we probably wouldn't have gone to war in the First World War. 1916, things happened. I'll just tease you with that because it's one of the issues that gets dealt with. And I sort of adapted it and directed it, and it did rather well in Edinburgh. We're sorting out the casting at the moment. Alex is going to be playing Frances, which is great. She's on Warhorse at the moment. Busy girl, lovely woman. And so, yes, that's the reason I'm not in Edinburgh for the whole of August. Winston and David doing weekends in August at the Tabard Theatre. Have a look, or, have a look, Tabard Theatre. It's a smashing little space. We're also, as I promised earlier on, I occasionally get emails asking about new writers. So there's a couple of writing competitions I thought I would point out that might be of use or of interest. The Fiction Factory, a short story, is an award for short stories up to 3,000 words. It costs £7 to enter. You have to be a bit careful with these writing competitions. If you are a writer, you'll probably know this, because some of them are not quite what they seem to be, but I think this is quite a good one. £7, short stories up to 3,000 words. Go to fictionfactory.biz. In fact, it's fiction-factory.biz. Have a look at that one. If you're into historical fiction, have a look at the HWA Dorothy Dunnett Short Story Prize. Historical fiction up to 3,500 words. The prize is £500 and the entry fee is £5. Closing date the 1st of July. And if you want to have a look at that, look at historicalwriters.org/awards. historicalwriters.org/awards. And finally, for this week, another short story competition, the H.G. Wells Short Story Competition, which is for short stories between 1,500 and 5,000 words. I'm not sure what the theme's going to be yet, but you'll have to look it up on the website. But there's a prizes of £1,500 split between junior and senior writers, and that's why I quite like this award. The entry fee is £10, or it's free if you're under 21 years of age. 8th of July is the closing date. Have a look at hgwellscompetition.com. hgwellscompetition.com. And again, if you'd like to know any more details, or if you're organising a competition, then Nick, N-I-C-K, at bohemianbritain.com is probably the best way to get through to me. Nick, N-I-C-K, at bohemianbritain.com. We're also talking about Bloomsday, and I wrote and quite often host most Saturday afternoons, the London Literary Pub Crawl, which starts in Fitzrover and ends in Soho. And one of the characters that we talk about is Brendan Behan, the Irish writer. And anytime I do, a programme that involves Irish writers, and my name's Hennegan, so I'm allowed to do this, I always love to play this. This is just kind of slightly anarchic, and I came across this a few years ago. Again, it's a very unusual track, but it's Brendan Behan singing The Old Triangle, which is from his play The Queer Fella. And it was in about 1960 he sang it, and here he is. Enjoy.
To begin the morning, the water boiling, get out of bed and clean up your cell. And the old triangle went jingle jangle along the banks of the Royal Canal. The screw was peeping, the lag was sleeping, as he lay there weeping for his gal Sal. And the old triangle went jingle jangle along the banks of the Royal Canal. In the female prison there are 70 women, and I wish it was with them that I did dwell. Then the old triangle could go jingle jangle along the banks of the Royal Canal. The wind was rising and the sun declining, as I lay there a-pining in my prison cell. And the old triangle went jingle jangle along the banks of the Royal Canal. And the old triangle went jingle jangle along the banks. Shut up down there or I give you a jingle jangle.
Always makes me smile, that. Brendan Behan, the Irish writer, of course, singing The Old Triangle from his play The Queer Fella. That was about 1960. And of course, Brendan Behan famously wrote and was involved with the Theatre Royal Stratford East under the brilliant directorship of Joan Littlewood. In fact, she's got a book out. She wrote a book a while ago called Joan's Book, and I read it, even longer ago. But it's a good book. If you want to know about Joan Littlewood, things like Oh, What a Lovely War. She basically believed that theatre should be created by the people that lived around the theatre. And of course, in those days, immigrants were mainly Irish, and people like Brendan Behan did rather well. Although he used to get annoyed, there's a pub in Soho in London called the French House, and the talk there was that Brendan Behan wrote, that's right, sorry, no, Dylan Thomas wrote under Milkwood and Brendan Behan wrote under Joan Littlewood. He wasn't too taken with that. But here we are. Our celebration of all things Irish in a sense, celebrating Bloomsday. Remarkable characters. Thank you for your time and your company. That's about all we've got time for this week. But as I say, do get in touch. Nick@bohemianbritain.com. Gets you to be. Nick, N-I-C-K, @bohemianbritain.com. And that's where these radio shows end up lying, on that particular channel, on the bit of the internet, bohemianbritain.com. Particularly if you're going to Edinburgh, let us know if you've got a book out or a story or anything that's going on, just anything to do with literary London or Ireland or America or Edinburgh, of course. Beautiful Edinburgh, I can't wait to get back there. Then do get in touch. I shall see you next time. Thank you very much for your company and your time. I'm Nick Hennegan on bohemianbritain.com, but chiefly, of course, this is Literary London on London's Art Station, Resonance 104.4 FM.